Thanks for joining us on the Page One podcast. I'm your host, Luke Peters, CEO of New Air Appliances. And in this episode of the Page One podcast, you're going to learn from Dr. Robin Gaster on how companies can win selling into Amazon, why Amazon's building exclusive brand partnerships, and how important is the private label business for Amazon. So we're going to go deep dive into all areas of Amazon with Dr. Gaster. Really looking forward to it. But before we get started, got a quick announcement here, and that is, listen, we need your help. If you're a vacation owner, we have a new cause that we're working on at vetcation.org. That's vetcation.org. You can see there how we're supporting veterans with dream vacations. So if you got a home or you know someone with a home, all we're doing is trying to match these deserving families, these veterans, with a free vacation. And so go over to vetcation.org. You can learn more or contact me, and so we can change some lives here. Great. Now back to this episode. Dr. Robin Gaster is president at Incumetrics, a data and analytics firm focused primarily on innovation. He's a visiting scholar at George Washington University. Robin has a master's degree in philosophy and a PhD in political science from Berkeley. Dr. Gaster, welcome to the Page One podcast.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Awesome. And please describe what you do, how you help clients, and did I pronounce it? Incumetrics, is that right?
Incumetrics is right. Yeah, I do. I do strategy work for companies, and I do data analysis and evaluation for government agencies. And the last couple of years, I've spent writing a new book about Amazon called Behemoth, Amazon Rising, because I think Amazon is an amazing and somewhat threatening company.
And we'll get right into that today. And before we go there, I didn't want to gloss over that. I mean, tell us, maybe you can give us a quick example of, what types of data or how you help these government agencies or other companies.
Sure. So I was lead researcher for the National Academies of Science and Engineering, looking at small business and federal government programs to support innovation at small businesses. And as part of that, I ran a lot of the data and did a ton of interviews with leaders of small businesses to understand what they needed and how the program could be involved. Similarly, I did some work recently for Sacramento as part of a team there trying to build programs to scale small businesses. So the sort of question is of how you take small, innovative businesses and help them to get beyond the technology into the market and then grow quickly has really been a sort of central interest.
Well, it's really interesting. I mean, was there a takeaway or anything that stood out on?
I mean, regrettably, yes. So if I from all those small businesses I interviewed, I found so many of them were driven by one person who had a brilliant idea. And it was really the transition from being a great scientist or engineer to being a great business person is a really, really difficult one. And the only harder transition is deciding that you are not the person who should be taking the thing forward on the business side. It's really hard. I mean, I just finished a book, and the thought of giving up control of my baby to publishers made me nauseous. I mean, it's a horrifying and difficult thing to do, but look, most scientists are scientists and engineers are engineers, and marketing and commercialization is a huge challenge that they are mostly not very well suited for. So the takeaway is to make sure you got the right team and that you don't try and overpower the team with your, as a founder. You need a team.
Yeah, well, that is so interesting. And definitely, I mean, most companies are like that, right? They'll be started by the entrepreneur. And the problem is at the beginning, the entrepreneur can't really afford to hire that amazing team. Other companies, they're started, with co-founders. Okay. So they kind of solve the problem that way. But yeah, that is an interesting takeaway.
It's hard. I mean, co-founders are difficult too. It's not like that's an easy street. And it's, so I'm just very sympathetic to the challenges of technology-based entrepreneurs. I'm just really sympathetic. It's very difficult, and the ones who make it are special people.
Well, that is a cool finding, and I'm glad we talked about that, because it gives kind of a more of a breadth of your experience and areas we've worked on. In this episode, we're going to focus on Amazon, how companies can win on Amazon. I know a lot of the listeners of the podcast, majority are all selling on Amazon one way or another, 3P or 1P. And quite frankly, a lot of them are not Amazon only businesses. Most of the companies, a lot of my friends, they started brick and mortar and now they're figuring out digital. So, Dr. Gaster, why don't we start with why is Amazon, let's get right into some specific details here with the Amazon. Why are they building exclusive brand partnerships and how does this whole thing work?
Okay. So I guess we have to step back a little bit. There's a whole chapter in my book which looks into Amazon's financials. Amazon makes it very difficult to understand where they are making money and where they're losing money. It's obviously deliberate. They publish revenues by business segment, but they don't publish expenses by business segment. So you have to try and work it out. So that's what I did. I spent a long time trying to figure that out. I think I did. My estimate is that Amazon's first-party business lost $40 billion last year. They have a huge pile of red ink under there, a lake. And that's okay because they fill it in from everywhere else. They fill it in from the marketplace and from Prime and from advertising and from AWS. So it works as an entity. But what it means is that underneath their retail business, they are losing money. So what that has led them to do, I believe, is in part to try and find ways of introducing products that are less competitive niches and where they can attract something of a brand premium. Right, so we know that most of their own products, their own Amazon Basics brands, are very cheap, low end of the market, no margin, probably cost them money. I doubt that they are profitable. So exclusive brands are an effort to solve the problem. Why, if you have negative 20% margins across your business, one thing to do is to try and build higher margin product categories. And how do you do that? If you're Amazon, well, you try and borrow brand awareness and credibility from existing brands. Existing brands don't want to give it up by actually having their main brand on Amazon for obvious reasons. So there's a compromise here. Brand will create an exclusive brand for Amazon. Amazon gets to promote it. Amazon gets to try and turn it into a real brand, and hence harvest the higher margins that would give them. So I see this as a direct response to the red ink over in 1P. This is an effort to build things with higher margins and try and address that problem. I don't incidentally think it's going to be successful.
That is really interesting. Let's dive in a little bit here. So I haven't spent the time diving in their financials as thoroughly as you have. And, just as a side note, I did kind of find it, I thought it was a little bit strange for them to have the AMS as a separate business. It's kind of, to me, it's all the same thing as, it's just another way that they're driving allowances in a way, right? They if you're 1P, you're paying various allowances with Amazon, and AMS to me is just another cost structure in there, which I see how it makes sense. They want to basically, you're paying for placement, but to them, they create a whole nother channel or a whole nother business segment. Of course, it's got incredible profitability.
AWS is not really anything to do
or not AWS.
With the retail.
Well, not that. I'm sorry, the advertising part, AMS.
Oh, the advertising business. Sure.
See, so they pull it out, but in a way, it's kind of like, it would be like me pulling out different customers in my business. At the end of the day, they all come together to form one P&L. But over there, they're kind of pulling these out as separate business segments. And of course, the advertising is going to have crazy margins, but really it's only as good as their retail businesses in a sense.
No, it's only as good as their marketplace business.
Okay.
Right? Because who pays for advertising? Amazon doesn't pay for advertising. That line item for revenues doesn't come from Amazon. It comes from persuading marketplace sellers to pay for advertising. Right? So it's essentially a tax on marketplace sellers.
Yeah, and well, in 1P as well, because we're paying it as well. Everybody's got to pay it if you want to kind of compete and rank at the top.
Interesting. I didn't realize that it was that was the case.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. So it's pulled out. So I was going to ask, how is Amazon so unprofitable on the 1P side? On the 3P,
well,
okay.
So if you reallocate some of the advertising revenues over to that side, maybe a third of it, it's still unprofitable. It's not as unprofitable. But
gotcha.
So why is it? I mean, this is a really interesting question. So you raised a real good question. So why is Amazon unprofitable on the 1P side? And I have some hypotheses, and maybe you can tell me that I'm wrong.
Sure.
The biggest place seems to me that Amazon's own catalog has gotten more and more bloated. It's just bigger. Mm-hmm. And you know how hard it is to run a tight supply chain for even one product. It's difficult. It takes energy. Amazon probably has more than 20 million SKUs. So one problem is simply managing supply chains efficiently for so many products. A second related issue is that where are those products sold? They're sold on the most competitive marketplace in the world. Well, maybe outside China. So if you think of Amazon's 1P business as kind of the great white whale of e-commerce, it's this enormous, huge, powerful business, but it's surrounded by millions, 6 million to be precise, 6 million sharks. Smaller businesses like yours that know your own business really well. And they're very well placed to compete. So that's two. And then the third thing is Amazon's decision 3-4 years ago to really push into China, not obviously by selling in China, but by opening up the gateway between Chinese manufacturers and the U.S. market. So if you think about it, what Amazon has really done over the last few years is encourage its suppliers in China to disintermediate it. They can go direct now. So what do they need Amazon for? They pay Amazon a fee, like all marketplace businesses, but they don't need to go through Amazon's 1P operation. So in a sense, what's happening is a kind of negative selection for Amazon. The products that are obviously going to be successful and do well on its marketplace are those where the manufacturers have the highest incentive to go direct and to go into the marketplace rather than through 1P.
And
so you're getting a kind of...
And what's creating that? Yeah, Dr. Gaster, what's creating that incentive? So they could go 1P, but they lose a little bit of pricing power. What is creating the incentive to go right to the marketplace instead?
Oh, I think they don't have to provide Amazon with margin. Mm-hmm. I mean, Amazon has done this in the book business itself, right? It went directly around the bookstores and said, fine, we can sell direct to the end customer. So if a manufacturer in Shanghai can sell direct to an American consumer without having to go through Amazon and its inevitable margin, that's a good thing.
Oh, you mean you mean going direct, meaning their own e-commerce presence, not even a Seller Central account. You're saying their own website.
No, I think through Seller Central is critical.
Yeah.
Chinese manufacturers could never find their way into the U.S. market without that.
Right.
But Amazon really encouraged it, opened the door over the last few years, and I think it's biting Amazon pretty bad. Yeah,
it's also U.S. manufacturers U.S. brands and wholesalers, because, that's a whole nother conversation, but, we're losing on the tariff front. Okay. Because, there's definitely some pricing tricks that a direct factory can play as far as when they import product and how that's priced and so on and so forth versus what, any of us other companies have to deal with, to comply with tariff regulation.
Right.
It really puts us at a disadvantage, and hopefully, Congress.
You mean they can use transfer pricing and reduce the tariffs that way?
Yeah. I don't want to guess or say who's doing what, but it's an obvious incentive that they can do. Mm-hmm. And it's just obviously evident in some of the pricing that's online. And, hopefully, folks smarter than me are looking at that, because it definitely puts U.S. companies at a huge disadvantage. I know the tariffs weren't intended to kind of go down that way, but that's kind of how it's playing out.
Interesting. I hadn't really thought about that much, but as you pointed out, it's obviously right.
Yeah. So back to exclusive brand partnerships, it makes total sense. Amazon wants to get a little bit more pricing power. There definitely are other players in the market that are doing this, who probably out in front of Amazon, like a Wayfair has been doing this for quite a while, and they're really focused on other brands, which has been a smart differentiating strategy for them. What does this say about strategy for brands? We'll just call them brands going forward who are selling through Amazon. How should they kind of play this minefield?
Well, it is a minefield, isn't it? I mean, well, tell me, so here's the sort of core of my belief about this, and you should be free to push back and tell me, no, this is not how it really is. But look, the reality is that maybe 60, 70% of product searches on Amazon are searches for products, not brands. Right? You're looking for underwear. You're not looking for Hanes.
Yep.
So in a really fundamental, deep way, Amazon is the anti-brand. It's the place where your brand power doesn't exist. I mean, the whole point of having a brand is to have a prior connection to the customer, and presumably a positive connection to the customer that will allow you to sell a little bit more easily or to charge a little bit more. And that's the magic of brands. And on Amazon, the power of search is explicitly designed to remove that. Every search is new. There is no pre-existing connection. And the relentless power of price competition means that margins get competed away. So I think in a very deep way, even though Amazon has all this fluff about building brands and building a storefront, I mean, we can come back and talk about storefronts on Amazon. I think if you're relying on Amazon to build your brand, you have a deep internal contradiction, and that's even if Amazon doesn't come after you with private label brands, which may or may not. But the notion that you can use Amazon to actually build a brand, I think, is wrong.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Amazon, for a brand that's entering a market, the advantage there is eyeballs. They're the biggest marketing engine in the world, definitely in the U.S. And
right.
And but a brand has to build. Well, first of all, a brand's got to understand their funnel. They have to understand the customer journey. A lot of times, if it's a commodity, under $50, then it's an impulse purchase. So that can be tougher. And if it's over that, and there's a journey that, there's different touch points online, then, the brands, and they're already doing it. They have to build their brand somewhere else. They're building on social media and in a number of other areas. So,
sure.
I think that's the way. It still can transact on Amazon, but it's got to be built somewhere else.
I think that's completely right. I mean, there are some sort of ancillary things. I mean, it's clear that Amazon is a kind of middle market product, right? And product search entity. If you can find more ways to differentiate what you do as part of your brand building, then that's a pretty good positive. If you can't, you're going to be in a commodity business, and that is going to be tough.
Yeah, 100%.
Commodity businesses get eaten by Amazon, basically.
Yeah, and
it's
all
really
the margins.
interesting. So, I mean, it is interesting. You see companies like Thrasio starting to buy up Amazon brands, right? That's and they're raising unbelievable amounts of money. I talked to some of their senior management a little while ago, and that's the model. The model is you find quote brands that are doing well, and you buy them up and bring them into your umbrella, and hopefully you have some economies of scale in dealing with Amazon. But I find that I can't really buy into it, because I don't believe these Amazon brands. I mean, some Amazon-only brands, a few Amazon-only brands seem to have some staying power. I mean, obviously Anchor would be the biggest example, but there are others in other niches. But overall, let's say you have something that you've built up a position in beach umbrellas, right? You have good reviews. You have a position as at the top of the category, but it all seems very transient. And in what sense is this really a brand?
Yeah, this is a really interesting discussion. And for those of you, the listeners that haven't looked into this, take a look at Thrasio and what they're doing. I mean, they've raised a ton of money. I've heard, by the way, Dr. Gaster, that they're super huge EBITDA positive, and they're buying these brands for, 3 times something, pretty, they're basically getting, really good pricing and rolling that up. And then they probably have some scale. And the other end of that is that, that beach umbrella brand, if they found a way to crack the code and get a gazillion reviews, they probably do have some staying power. So there definitely are some brands that are doing well. I mean, it is early days still in my mind. But my question was, how are they going? What does their scale look like? How are they going to manage hundreds of different brands? It's really interesting, but I actually don't doubt. I actually think that there is a lot of opportunity, because a lot of individual operators don't have that experience. They don't have financial experience. They just built a brand and they're just selling on Amazon. And now they're rolled into a company, that's got funding, that's got financial experience, that's got discipline around how they spend and how they, their supply chain and how they run the organization. So there definitely could be some scale.
I don't think that's where their expertise is. I think their expertise is in getting Amazon reviews.
Oh, I see. Do you know how they're doing that? I think that would be interesting to hear.
No, I absolutely don't. But if you think about it, let's take our beach umbrella, example, right?
Yep.
People only ever buy one. It's not like you go buy beach umbrellas on every 6 months. You buy one.
Mm-hmm.
So for it to be successful, what are the key characteristics there? Well, there are really 2. One is price and one is reviews. Right? I mean, that's really all that matters on Amazon.
Yep.
To keep you there. Of course, it helps that you're in the best sellers and all that, but that's kind of, part of the cycle. So the one place where Thrasio could really develop expertise would be in acquiring reviews. I think that's got to be central. And I have no idea how they do that. And given the definitely strange and murky world of reviews, who knows? I'm not casting any aspersions. I think they might very well have real expertise in that. And if they did, that would be massively valuable on Amazon.
Yeah, I totally agree. And there is a lot of unknown. I mean, we see all kinds of weird things happening with a lot of sellers. I don't know how they're doing what they're doing and generating these reviews and
Fake Spot argues that maybe 40% of Amazon reviews over the holidays were unreliable.
Wow. Well, Amazon definitely has tightened things up. I mean, they're definitely trying to continue to kind of create the trust in the review system by eliminating some loopholes. But, there's a lot of motivation for some of these brands to work their way around it.
I don't think that's true either.
No?
No. I mean, the biggest change they've made by far recently is to allow people to leave star reviews without text. Right? So you can go on Amazon, just punch in 5 stars and read and no text. Well, what this does is open the door to people who don't speak English.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Right. So
Yep.
there's been a tremendous increase in the number of quote reviews, number of star reviews. So Amazon gets to show that it is even more dominant in e-commerce. But what it does to the quality of the reviews, I think, is obviously pretty questionable.
That is really interesting. I didn't actually realize they had made that change. When you're looking at Amazon, 1P and 3P, and again, just speaking for some of the audience, and a lot of them I know really well, a lot of them are selling 1P, and 1P can work great if you have a really, really inexpensive product or if you have a really, really big product. Those are like the two areas that I see 1P having a big advantage.
Sorry, was that a big product?
Yeah, larger, because it doesn't fit into, say, the FBA world, right? It's dimensionally larger. And so it's harder to get that FBA badge. So, and then really small makes sense for, a lot of friends that I know, just because if they had to sell, 99-cent or even $9.99 products, sometimes in their categories, consumers are picking up 3 or 4 or 5, but they might pick up other companies' products, and it just makes sense for Amazon to be handling the supply chain. But then there's advantages on the 3P side as well. Obviously, you control pricing, and there's a bunch of other reasons why there's been a big move to 3P. What is your take on it? What do you think? Are there any key decision points, or maybe a different way you might look about where brands can decide which direction to go?
Well, two things. First, I think it is inevitable that Amazon will continue and probably accelerate its shift away from 1P to 3P. 3P, from Amazon's perspective, 3P is a license to print money. They take their 15% commission, they take their 8% or thereabouts in advertising and marketing fees. They fill their logistics channel through FBA, and they take no risk. I mean, there's no way they can lose money in this.
Yep.
Whereas in 1P, they can and do lose money. It's much more expensive. They have to keep, I know that they have very low inventory turn and all that, but still they have to have inventory. So there's inventory risk, there's product risk. If they're chasing fashionable, they're chasing into all different kinds of markets that strike me as basically ludicrous. I mean, if you can explain to me how Amazon can be a successful seller of luxury goods, I have a bridge to sell you. I don't believe it. I just don't see it. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. So you can buy them on there, but is Amazon going to be the sort of brand and locus? No, of course not. So I guess what I'm saying is for your guys, first off, number one could definitely see continuing and increasing shift to sort of pushing companies from 1P to 3P. So you're going to see that. Second, if Amazon is really losing as much money as I think it is on retail, you're going to see tighter and tighter negotiations there. And you're going to start to see products which are marginal being cut. Because the best way out of this lake of red ink is to take their 25% of worst performing SKUs and simply push them directly over to the marketplace. So I think they can all expect that. And this comes to the second point I would say is, if you can be successful on the marketplace, that's where you should go. Because, look, I've run, my own business for a long time, and being dependent on one big customer is horrible. Especially somebody like Amazon, who, let's be fair, Amazon is not in the soft and fuzzy category as a partner. They'll do what suits Amazon, and tomorrow your business might not suit Amazon. So the risk in 1P is really high, and it's not under your control. So if I was selling on Amazon, I would be really focused on figuring out how to make 3P successful.
That's some great advice and really interesting breakdown there. Let's talk about Amazon private labels. First, can you define, just so everybody here listening, the difference between that and the exclusive brand partnerships that they're doing?
Yeah. So private label is like other companies' private labels, like Kirkland over at Costco or Walmart. The idea is basically, if you have a product that's doing well on Amazon, Amazon goes to the supplier of that product or somebody who can make something very similar and says, look, I want a widget exactly like this, and I want you to sell it to me directly. And then, to label it as Amazon Basics, or if it's a bit fancier, Lark and Row or something like that. So Amazon creates these brands or mock brands and just puts them on products that it's bought direct from the manufacturer. So the brand that originally developed it and has a relationship with that manufacturer is essentially cut out of the deal. And there's been a lot of criticism of Amazon from Senator Warren and others saying, look, this is what Amazon uses your data for. Amazon has all the data. They can see exactly which products it can make the most money by going private label, and so it does it. Couple of things on that. This is not new. This has been going on for a very long time. All other big retailers do this. I know in Walmart grocery, for example, 35% of their products are private label.
Yep.
The second thing is that Amazon's private label is actually a very small business, at least according to Amazon. And there's some outside evidence as well. Amazon says a private label is less than 1% of retail, which suggests, given how long they've been at it, that it's not very successful. So that's the story on private label. Exclusive brands are arrangements to create a brand that will only be sold on Amazon by a brand that has brand recognition elsewhere. So Nike might create a brand that is sold as sub-brand called, I don't know, Shoes from Nike or something like that, that is sold only on Amazon. And the advantage is that Amazon gets to borrow some of Nike's prestige. Nike gets to sell on Amazon without actually having to destroy its own existing business to do that. So that's the difference. It's quite a different relationship than the private label, which is all Amazon.
Yeah, and so do you think that the private labels, I totally agree with you, by the way. The conversation's been around a long time. They've definitely disrupted certain areas like batteries and a few other categories, paper shredders, but at the same time, it didn't roll out to every category like a lot of people had feared.
No.
And it's not as big as really I thought it would be, at least from what I can tell on the outside. But this exclusive brand partnerships, I mean, it still does sound like a great deal for some of these brands to work with Amazon on an exclusive brand partnership. What are your longer term thoughts on this? Is it going to be around a long time? Is it going to be a growth area in Amazon?
Well, it's the same story as private labels, trying to increase Amazon's margin.
Yeah.
Trying to create something. But the reality, I mean, so now I get to ask you a question, all right? Do you think that these Amazon exclusive private label brands, which are only going to be available on Amazon, do you think that they will actually generate real brand power?
Well,
the people will seek them out.
I think they could because of how big Amazon is. But it just depends. I don't know the total of what Amazon's going to invest in them. I don't know if the brand's going to be...
But let's take a case. All right? Let's take an imaginary case. We can go back to our beach umbrella case, right? I mean, just for entertainment's sake. Okay, let's say that Amazon goes to the leading provider of beach umbrellas in the world and says, okay, let's do an exclusive brand here. So we're going to call it Mom and Pop's beach umbrellas because that has nothing to do with either of us. So now Amazon is selling Mom and Pop beach umbrellas. right? And Amazon has some obvious expertise in selling on Amazon, so it can use that to sell mom and pop beach umbrellas. And it can continue to do that. And so the manufacturer gets a benefit because they're getting sales that they wouldn't otherwise get. They don't want to put their own brand on Amazon because it would destroy their pricing structure. So now they have this opportunity. And Amazon can market these things and generate reviews and figure out how to do this. And they built something. But what I would say they built is an Amazon business. They've not built a brand at all. Because nobody is going to go on Amazon looking for mom and pop beach umbrellas.
Yeah,
They're going to search for beach umbrellas, and mom and pop is going to show up on top, possibly because they have lots of reviews, possibly because pricing is good, or possibly because Amazon has tilted the algorithm so that they show up on top. Amazon claims not to do that. We don't know. But can you see the distinction? What we have is an Amazon business. We don't really have a brand because customers are not going to that thing because of the brand. They're going because of the search.
But see, I totally agree, by the way, with your analysis. I'm just saying, I don't know if they've made a statement on why they're creating these, the brands and why they're doing the partnerships. But I would venture to say, and this goes with other marketplaces as well. I mean, the inherent advantage and the motivation is because, these brands or these retailers, these marketplaces, they want to avoid channel conflict, just like a brand myself, wants to avoid. So when they create it, I mean, the big advantage is, hey, it's only on Amazon. There is a brand, it's only on Amazon. It's not everywhere else. And there's a little bit more price stability there. I think that's more of a driving factor. And they can pull levers and I don't know what the levers are going to be. I don't know how much they're going to promote it or, use their different resources to make it rank. Right. I think, what's interesting though, is just in this whole conversation, I think what is forgotten is that these individual entrepreneurs are working so hard on Amazon to sell product. It's kind of like owning like McDonald's in their franchising system. There's such a motivation for that franchisee to really operate well so they can make money. And they're
to say this, I have a different analogy in the book. I call them sharecroppers.
Okay. Well, I mean, we have a good relationship with Amazon, so I wouldn't go that direction, but I will say that there is so much, blood, sweat, and tears put in by the entrepreneur. It's going to be hard for Amazon to recreate that internally. And I think, that's probably not often talked about is how much these different entrepreneurs are really driving Amazon. Amazon puts the rules out there and they compete with those rules, but they're up early and up late. And so anyways, there's that dynamic.
But
it's really interesting.
I don't think those are the kind of companies that Amazon is trying to do exclusive brands with.
Well,
I think they're trying to do it with much more established, bigger companies.
Yeah, but it's still the same thing. Those companies, just because they're bigger, many of them are still very entrepreneurial. Even if they are 50 million, 100 million, they're lower middle market companies. Of course, they want to do it.
Maybe you're right. It would be fascinating to learn. I mean, maybe somebody out there is checking. I can talk to Joe Whatnot and see if he's checking on which exclusive brand deals are being done. I don't know.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Yeah, exactly. That maybe they know more about that at Thrasio. I mean, they're probably tied in really close there.
Yeah, that's true.
Listen, this is really, I could go on and on about this and we can go off on tangents. It's kind of fun actually, but tell me this, will Amazon be in the private label business in 10 years? I mean, you mentioned how they haven't grown it that far. What are your thoughts on that?
I think probably not, for two reasons. One, I think at the moment it's a useful red rag to regulators. It gets their blood steaming and they get to shout and scream about it. And if I had a sort of slightly more paranoid viewpoint, I would suggest that Amazon is continuing to publicize this business partly to attract the attention of regulators so they don't go after things that are really important. And second, I think Amazon's losing money on it. I mean, I know it sounds ridiculous that they're losing money on private labels, but if they were making more, they would be expanding it faster. And if you think about it, they have a ton of really cheap items. Amazon Basics is their biggest brand, and plus and Amazon Essentials, which it's batteries, it's underwear, it's socks, very low cost items. And they're continuing to provide those overnight to their Prime members. And that just costs money. It's expensive. And I think they lose money on it. So I think that the delivery costs and fulfillment costs on cheap items are eating all of the margin and then a lot more out of Amazon's private label business. So and unless they can find a way to do private labels where the unit price is much higher, I think it's consistently not going to work. So I think eventually they'll be out of it. I think 10 years from now, Amazon retail will be a rump. I think it'll all be marketplace, mostly marketplace, and private labels will go away just as part of that.
Okay, well that's a really interesting take on it. And we can see that transition happening. Why don't we? This is a really interesting question, and just because it's a thought people always have about big companies. Who's around the corner, and the question is, can anyone challenge Amazon in the next 5 or 10 years? And before I let you answer, it's because I have my own views, and there are definitely some other great brands out there. Wayfair and Walmart are growing quick. Home Depot's unbelievable. But they're different than Amazon. They don't cover every base like Amazon does. And nobody, quite frankly, has the logistics that Amazon has. I mean, not even close to the logistics. Walmart. They have it in a different way, but it's like, who do you see that could compete outside of some regulatory intervention on Amazon?
No one.
Yeah.
I mean, the train's left the station. Look, Amazon has 120 million Prime members in the U.S. There are 125 million households, right? I mean, those numbers are staggering.
Yeah.
Right? And if you have Amazon Prime, are you really going to buy another marketplace subscription, one that doesn't give you Golden Globe entertainment and wardrobes and Amazon days and whatever else you can think of? You're not. And while Prime is dominant and the logistics are dominant, Amazon is not beatable. And as it moves away from being its own retail business into being a pure platform, I think it will be even more successful. Because provided it spends enough money to clean up its platform, which is its own risk at the moment.
And that is a succinct way to say it. And that's how I see it too. There's nothing, and look, we can go back in time and, maybe people didn't see Facebook coming when it came, but, I'm pretty tuned in right now, and it's a machine. It's a machine on all fronts, even on just every single angle. And, what other innovation though do you see with Amazon in the next couple of years? Do you see it? Yeah.
I'm actually working on a longer-term project to look at Amazon in healthcare.
Okay.
I mean, I know they've gotten into groceries. I think it's a mistake. I think they're going to, get their nose bloodied and eventually leave. But, and I'm happy to talk about that. But healthcare is a real opportunity because it's heavily data-centric. It's failing at the moment. I mean, we all hate dealing with our healthcare, right? It's just awful. We hate the insurance. We hate, the bureaucracies. We hate we can't even talk to a doctor when we need to. I mean, there is lots and lots and lots of opportunity, and I think Amazon is exceptionally well placed. It's uniquely well placed to eat healthcare from below, and I think that's what it's really going to do. So
well, that is
the next 5 years.
Yeah, and that would be a huge pivot, right? A totally different market, but that is, but it's a really interesting point.
Do.
That is exactly what they do.
Bezos likes to say, your margin is my opportunity. There's plenty of margin in healthcare.
No doubt about that. And before we get to the last question, I just kind of wanted to bottom line a couple of the big themes I had here. And this is, for all of the Amazon sellers that are listening, definitely no 3P, just like Dr. Gaster said, there's a move away from 1P. I'm a big fan of 1P. We love Amazon and our relationship there, but there is definitely a trend to go to 3P. And so everybody kind of should learn and understand 3P. Definitely look into exclusive brands if you get the opportunity. Sounds like Amazon's moving that direction. It may not be available for everybody, but if there's, ask your buyer, and then, build your brand. This is for everybody. You got to own your own brand outside of Amazon.
That's absolutely clear.
You got to own your own email list.
Aside from anything else,
yep,
you don't know any of your customers on Amazon.
Yeah, you have to convert them. You have to build your own business and have your own brand and have your own email list and communicate with those customers for a myriad of reasons. Why don't we?
That's right.
Why don't we finish up here? Tell us a little bit more about your book, Behemoth: Amazon Rising: Power and Seduction in the Age of Amazon.
Thank you. Yeah, well, it's a book that tries to capture where Amazon came from. I mean, 25 years ago, it was a tiny online bookstore, right? And now you can't turn around without banging into Amazon, a $400 billion company. That's special. That's not, even in the digital world, that's special. I mean, Facebook and Google basically got rich squatting over gushes of information and being in the right place at the right time. And Amazon keeps building big, huge, sustainable businesses, one next to the other, $10 billion at a time. And so that's different. And I think so the book explores Amazon, what makes Amazon unique, what makes it different, how it does what it does. And then it looks at where it's going over the next 10 years and really what we need to do about it. Because I don't think that it's reasonable to leave the huge companies like Amazon completely without regulation, without effective regulation. We need to find new ways, new tools for managing them so we can get the best out of them, but without letting some of their more destructive tendencies accelerate.
Well, and we'll definitely have a link to that in the show notes. And I think you brought up a really interesting point there, Dr. Gaster, that a lot of people haven't, at least I haven't even really thought about it, even though it's right in front of me. And that is that Amazon has created so many different businesses. And while these other huge tech companies honestly haven't, like they're growing, but still, Google's living off its ads business. Yeah.
There's Gmail. That's it. Yeah. Everything else they bought.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Amazon has been able to literally create these new businesses. That's why I got no doubt that, if they wanted healthcare, that they definitely could get into that. So really interesting takeaway there. How can listeners, find you online or learn more about you and your company?
Sure. They can find me at robingaster.com. Obviously, the book's available at Amazon and at many other bookstores, including your local bookstore if you want to avoid Amazon. And I would welcome emails. You can find me on LinkedIn. So plenty of places to find me.
Fantastic. Listen, I really enjoyed talking with you and hope everybody enjoyed the interview today. Really appreciate your reviews on iTunes and hope everybody joins us for the next interview. And before I let you all go, remember, head on over to vetcation.org. If you have a vacation home or know someone that does and you want to support the cause of linking up veterans and families in need to that vacation home, really appreciate that support there. Take care, everybody.